Today I am sharing how and why I painted a customized version of a bull in a china shop. It is a weird humid mess outside, like a storm is coming. I don't know what is going on with my hair right here. It wasn't like that earlier. I'm just gonna have to deal with it. No one cares, moving on. So I am headed over to Aquastudios. I'm gonna give, you can see it's super shiny. I just varnished it a little while ago. I'm gonna go take this painting over to Corey and surprise him with it. He has no idea. So, I asked Sean when he was over setting up the tank, Corey needs a painting. What should I do for Corey? And he instantly responds, bull in a china shop. Like, so quick.
Oh my God.
So there is your bull in a china shop, customized for you.
That's awesome. Thank you so much.
If you would like to watch the 1 hour and 40-minute version of this lesson, make sure to head over to Patreon, where you get access to all of my longer lessons. Every single week I've got a new one. They normally range 1 to 2 hours long. For as little as $4 a month, you get instant access to all of my lessons. There are over 200 you get as soon as you sign up. I've got a link in the video description to my Patreon video library if you want to see if that is a fit for you. You also get a free colored pencil demonstration over there, so you can see if my teaching style is a fit for you. So for this design, I started out by sketching this in Photoshop with my Wacom tablet just to get a general layout of where I wanted things to go. I just wanted china and, the teacups and everything just floating through the air, flying around. I was clearly not going for the size to be super accurate on any of this, because that would probably be the biggest teacup in the world hanging on his horn there. So I wanted something very surreal and to capture that idea of bull in a china shop, because that is, as I later found out, something that for some reason Sean and Corey have been friends forever, has always said about Corey, and he says that all the time. So that was why I really wanted to kind of capture that in this one painting. By painting a base background, it didn't really matter what color I went there. I just wanted something soft. And I had the idea of just sort of out of focus teacups in the background. It didn't work with the colors I later put in. So what I'm doing here with the airbrush really kind of ended up being a waste. I mean, it didn't hurt anything, but I also didn't leave it there. So I'm just using the airbrush to get this generalized shape and shadow there. Again, I'm going to paint over this. I am completely wasting time there. No big deal. So once I got that background very loosely put in, I'm going to go ahead and start blocking in the bull. Now, normally I start with whatever is farthest in the back and work my way forward. I painted in his horns just so I had a general shape where that was going to go. With this piece being surreal, it's not like I have a definite reference photo where I'm just copying it start to finish. I'm kind of guessing a lot about where I'm going to put things, how I want things to look. So I jump around a bit more when I paint in this style than I might if I was going for something super, super realistic. So I'm just loosely blocking in and mapping out where are my general lights and darks. And on this one, I kept changing my mind on what colors I wanted. I thought maybe all blues and maybe the purple tones. So I kept going back and forth too until I finally settled on a general, this is going to be my color choice for this. So here I'm using a rake brush, and I did a video showing how I use these rake brush and reviewing the ones that I liked. I'll have a card pop up or a link in the video description. But with these, what you're basically doing is one brush gives you a whole bunch of little individual brush strokes. So it makes it very easy to capture the look of fur or rough feathers that are somewhat frayed at the ends, grass, anything like that. These brushes are wonderful for. Now, I don't want to do everything with a rake brush because it will end up looking too uniform, too mechanical. So what I'll do is once that dries, I can come back through with a liner brush and better define some of those clumps and clusters of fur. Now we're really blocking in some of the darker areas. I'm mixing my Mars Black with some deep violet. So a lot of what you see where you look at it and you just assume that's straight black paint. It really isn't. I normally mix it with another color, and that's going to make my black look even darker. It gives it a lot more depth than if I just use straight flat black paint. So blocking in the base of the teacups and teapots. Now, one of the things you can notice here, see how I am not completely solid covering the background. I'm letting some of that violet show through. So this just makes it easier for me. It looks like I've got some of the reflections from the background on the subject. Whenever you are mixing many, many elements into one painting, you need to try to make sure they all feel like they go together. I'm using references photos I found of various teacups. None of them are from the same photo. So I've got different light sources, I've got different shading, everything is different. I need to find a way to make the fish, all of the china, and the bull and the octopus, everything has to feel like they go together in this piece, even though they're all really, really separate from each other. So pulling these same colors will help. I'm using this ultramarine blue, and I'm going to tie this color in through a lot of this painting. That's another thing that's going to help pull this together. So one of the things that will tie these elements together is that background color, this sort of plum colors and oranges. That is going to be in, as you can see here, in the teacups and the teapots. It's also a color I used heavily in the bowl. Now, once I get that in there, the blue is going to be my next element that really ties everything together nicely. I think that the actual reference photos I was using of these cups, there were red flowers in different colors that just weren't going to fit with this piece. So pulling some of that deep violet, I've got it mixed in with black there. And again, it's being used all over. So I've got that same color in the bull's horns, the same color in the teapots. Whenever you introduce a new color, you have a color in one area, make sure you pull that into many areas of the painting to make it feel like it really all fits together. Now you will see me jump around a lot more on this painting than usual because I've got to figure out how to make some of these colors work together. I wasn't sure what color I wanted the octopus to be, but I knew he needed to feel like he was a part of this painting. And so I just started blocking it in and I just kept adjusting the color until he felt a part of the scene. So for the fish here, I'm pulling that same violet color that I was using before as the base. Now a lot of these fish, they have those areas that I'm leaving violet really are white, but in this case, white is reflective, so we want to pull those same colors that are on the teacup in the background. That needs to be on the fish as well. We don't just want to paint them flat white. They wouldn't have any depth to them, and they wouldn't feel like they were a part of this piece. They would just feel like a sticker that you pulled off one scene and stuck onto another. So whenever you're painting something that has white, whether it be a teacup or in this case a fish, a lot of those areas you want to make sure it's picking up whatever your background colors are. Obviously a lighter version of the background color, but you still will have a lot of color. They're not just going to be flat white. Got some firefish up here, and then the start of a little clownfish. I'm taking my airbrush. I decided I really wanted to push a lot of this deeper into the shadow. So I've got black mixed with a violet, and I'm just gonna push all of that back. I'll have to come through and better define some of my edges because I'm making them pretty fuzzy here. I really didn't like the background that I had. I stepped away from it for a day and decided, you know what, I think I can make this better. So we're gonna go for more of a bokeh look, kinda, with the circles. I'm going to use a stencil once I get the darks in here. And the airbrush paint that I'm using is mostly the Goldens. I really like the Goldens High Flow airbrush paints. Those are probably my top of the list as far as favorites go. Right behind that are the Holbein. So I've got the Holbein black just because for some reason I don't know why I don't have that in the Goldens, but those are the paints that I'm using there. All the supplies I'm using are listed in the video description. So I'm using a stencil to get these circles. Now, when I do this sort of look, I want to make sure these circles are overlapping each other. I'm not going for a polka dot background, so it's very important that they're kind of clumped and clustered together versus individual spread out more. Now I went through and airbrushed a very, very translucent, really pretty gold on top of that. And I've got to do some research. I don't think the gold paints, most of the metallics are not light fast, so I would assume the same on the airbrush paint, but it's still fun. In a case like this where it's a gift and I'm not worried if this painting lasts 100 years, then I'll have some fun with the gold paints. But it has this really pretty metallic look to it in person. It's not something that you see that much on video, but it's a really cool look. I also use the Liquitex metallic gold. Same thing. They're not rated as being light fast, so it wouldn't be something that I would put on that I was selling, but something as a gift where we're just going for something fun. I get to play with some of these fun paints I might not normally mess with. Some more detail. I am using a synthetic hog-haired liner brush there. Pulling some of that violet from the that I used on the fish, we'll throw that on the octopus too. He's going to need lots of colors. And the big thing to notice on this, everything is a layering process. Everything to do with acrylic painting, it's all layers. It's not a paint by number. This is not just put the right color in the right place. It's probably not going to come out looking very good that way. We want to layer on top of layer on top of layer. Now, I pre-drew everything out in Photoshop, and then I used tracing paper, traced it, because why should I have to draw it out twice? Traced it, and then I can use transfer paper to draw in those details where I had painted over them. So it's just a little trick to make your life a lot easier. You already drew it once, and let's not keep redrawing the same thing over and over again. Even if you were to have drawn something, let's say you drew it on a big piece of white paper, of scratch paper, the tracing and transfer paper method works really well for getting that detail back in. It saves time. You already drew it. So even if you're somebody who is not looking to actually trace your work or use a projector, you can still use it to keep your work clean and to save time. Like in this case, I drew all that. Why would I want to draw it again? It was already drawn out. And with the tracing and transfer paper, all you do is you put the tracing paper over the area that you want to work on and use transfer paper under and a stylus, and it just draws out, you trace over what you have there, and you've got those lines now nice and clean on your canvas without having a lot of eraser marks. One of the things that typically happens, let's say you use a white charcoal pencil, that's if I'm going to freehand on a canvas, that's what I use, but sometimes you still end up with smudges and eraser marks that you don't really want. It doesn't end up as clean. Using tracing and transfer paper, you can get really, really clean work with no eraser smudges, none of that. Put some detail now on the little firefish. And see, if we just layer until it looks good. You're going to have some really bad layers. That is okay. Just don't call it finished until it starts looking how you wanted it to. But don't let those bad layers scare you. You're not done yet. You didn't mess anything up. You're just not finished. Keep layering until it looks good. One of the biggest mistakes a lot of newer artists will make is that they call the work finished when it's really only about a quarter of the way done. Keep layering, keep blending until it looks how you wanted it to. And you may have some layers where you thought it looked pretty good, you added some more and it looked worse. That's okay. It wasn't done either way. You didn't hurt anything. Just keep layering. Having it sometimes get worse before it gets better is pretty common. And especially with acrylic painting, there's nothing you can do that you can't fix. You just paint over anything that you didn't like. Some more shading in here. And most of the brushes that I use are Taklon bristled brushes. I have a few synthetic hog-haired, but I would say the majority are my Taklon bristles. I like the rounds and the filberts the most. And I'm not super picky on the brand. I can go generic on that and be perfectly happy. I've got some from Simply Simmons. I've got some generics from different various art supply stores. When it comes to my acrylic brushes, I'm not that picky. My paints, my canvas, absolutely. Speaking of, this is being done on a Frederick's Blue Label canvas, so it's really smooth. I can pretty much get dry brush, which is kind of a sloppy way of painting, at least in my opinion, but you can't tell, it doesn't look dry brushed here because it's so smooth, the canvas is, it ends up looking like you painted wet into wet. Just for transparency, I am sponsored by Frederick's. They did supply me with this canvas. They were already the only canvas I used, so no real difference there. And then the paints that I'm using, these are the Liquitex Basics. Add some little dots, make it look sparkly. A few final little details, some fluff around his ears. And that is about it for this one. If you ever find yourself in a bit of a rut, you can't think of what to paint, just throw a bunch of random stuff together. Give yourself a little bit of an assignment. So maybe you're including, well, in this case, it needed to be a bowl, the china, and fish. But what else could you combine to do something like that? I mean, if you're just out of painting ideas, maybe it's an apple, a fork, and a chickadee. Actually, that's an idea I really do want to paint. But try combining things that you might not think to combine, and you can come up with something really, really unique. So a quick update on the reef tank I've been sharing with you guys that was installed a few weeks ago. It is now about 3 weeks old. My clownfish moved in almost a week ago. The tank finished cycling. We use the Fritz products, which makes the cycle go really fast, way faster than it was back in the 90s when I set up my first reef tank. So the clownfish are in. They are doing great. I've also moved in some of my older mushrooms that were in my other tank. Those are so happy. I think it's the lights in this that they're responding that well to. They are super, super happy about that. I've ordered some pods, so little critters that live in the sand and in the rock, and they're good. They're just good for your tank. Those will be here on Thursday. And then I went over to Aquastudios. So this is why Corey was Oda painting. He has helped me so much. Him and Brandon both. If you ever get a chance to go over to Aquastudios in the Colony, Texas, it is such an amazing fish store. They've got everything. If they don't have it, they can order it for you. I know. I have them order stuff for me all the time. And they've got such an amazing selection of fish and coral. So my coral, I went on a little bit of a shopping spree. My old tank, I've got a 13.5 gallon aquarium that I've had for 2.5 years. That's where my clownfish lived before they got moved into their little clownfish mansion. So this tank is now going to be the quarantine for my coral. So I've got a new cleaner shrimp in there, and I got a bunch of zoas and mushrooms and one leather coral. The leather coral is really cool. He's currently in the process of shedding, which from what I've read isn't uncommon when you get a new one and move them into a new tank. I've never had a leather coral before, so this is new for me, but he should get pretty big pretty quickly. And I'm hoping that he'll host the clownfish. I'm going to put him in the area the clownfish like to hang out in, and it is one of the corals that clownfish sometimes like to play in instead of anemones. If you're unaware, anemones are full of drama. They don't like to stay put. So they may be fine for months and then randomly decide to climb around your tank and sting all of your other corals and possibly get sucked into your power heads and kill your tank. It's a whole thing. It's a lot of drama that I just didn't want to deal with. So I figured this might be a good alternative so that the clownfish could have somewhere fun to play, and the coral is not going to walk away. So that guy hopefully will be eventually one of the bigger corals in the tank, one of the kind of main features. So I'm really excited about him, and his polyps are just starting to come up as he's going through this new shed. But I will keep you updated on the progress of the tank. That's where we are now. Have you subscribed yet? If not, I have a handy button right there. It's round, has an orange arrow going towards it. If you click on that, that'll help you to keep up to date with all of my new art videos every single week. Also, make sure to click on the bell notification icon because YouTube is horrible about notifying people when a new video goes live. You can also sign up for my email newsletter. I send out one email every Wednesday letting you know whatever videos I have go up and what live streams are scheduled for that week, along with some motivational artist tips and such.